once our people get in place. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item of business is reviewing the minutes from the regular meeting on October 4th. Anybody have any comments? Make sure your mic is on when if you want to make a comment or a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Proceed to vote.
Weiss,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Next item is any public participation. Says limit to 3 minutes per person. We're trying to do things the way that City Council does, but our TV isn't on there, and anyway, they may start the timer, but I would like to see how much time is left, but it needs to be turned towards whoever's speaking for any public participation. Do we have anybody that wants to public participate? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, public hearing. And Nancy, would you enlighten us a little bit?
Good evening. This is a request for a rezoning of a half-acre parcel located at 1345 South Broadway from R1 Single Family Residential to C Commercial Highway. The location is currently both a residence for the current owners, the Wootons, and Yellow Car Winery has operated there since approximately 2018. Got a location map for you up there. The parcel in question is a small portion, or most of this square here, which is the location right now of the existing winery and home for the Wootons. Give you a little more detail on that location. Just for your information, the existing winery was originally established under that existing residential R1 zoning as a home business. It was approved by county or city planning staff at the time. Although it has significantly since that time outgrown that designation and its strict requirements. They were served with a zoning violation letter earlier this fall. It is, we do believe that they are now complying with those strict requirements of the home business, but wish to expand further and have applied for the rezoning to commercial. I do want to note that should this rezoning be approved, I would continue to recommend that that winery come back in through for a site plan to allow the Planning Commission and public and City Council to address any issues with operational issues that we've certainly heard from, given its location with single-family residences nearby.
So let me interrupt you a minute. So if I understand, even if it's approved, they need to come back with a site plan?
Yes.
Is that before it goes to council?
No, I would say it would have to go to council to get fully approved for rezoning. So assuming that happened, big assumption, it could go the other way.
Well,
At that point, we would recommend that they come on back and we could approve the site plan. Since it's never been looked at, except as a home business at this point.
And we only make a recommendation to city council? They're the final say on anything, so just.
Yes. Let me go back. So to locate the existing zoning, it's currently R1, which is the blue color. The red color on this map is commercial zoning. The property surrounding on two sides of the parcel is currently zoned commercially. It's currently vacant and also owned by the Wootons. To the west is the county unincorporated property. Significant topography drops off, very little impact to the west. To the north are established single-family homes on small parcels. So this shows you a little bit more detail of the parcel. They are proposing to hold back a small 1 acre piece, or a small lot, it's not an acre, that would stay single-family residential. There's a structure on that now. As far as the criteria for a rezoning, I also want to go a little bit on the property history, because I think that plays into somewhat to the criteria. The structure on the property that's currently operated as the winery and their home was, as far as I can tell, and I'm going through assessor department records here, county assessors, originally established perhaps as a church or other commercial building. It operated as that church until 1997, when the property was purchased by Hospice of Montezuma County. It was then operated as their office until 2018, when it was purchased by the Wootons.
So when hospice owned it, was it zoned how? Residential, commercial?
It was zoned R1 as far back as I can trace, even though it wasn't really operated as a residence, perhaps ever. So I just wanted to get that clear. Now, the criteria that you need to use to determine whether or not a property should be rezoned is up on the board there, and of course in your staff report. The criteria we go over is, was the existing zone for the property adopted in error? Has there been a change of character in the area? Is there a need for the proposed rezoning within the area or community? Are the proposed uses compatible with the surrounding area or uses? Will there be adverse impacts, and/or can any adverse impacts be mitigated? Will there be benefits derived by the community or area by granting the proposed rezoning? Are adequate facilities available to serve the development for the type and scope suggested by the proposed rezone? Or could they be extended? Is the proposal in conformance with the policies, intents, requirements of the comprehensive plan? And does the proposed change constitute spot zoning? So if I go over those, I'll go over them fairly quickly. I went over them a little bit more in detail in the staff report. The discussion on whether the property was zoned in error, that one's a little tough. We can't really tell when it was zoned, but it does appear that the existing structure on the property was likely built as a commercial structure, or perhaps a church, was only recently in 2018 converted into the residence winery. Of course, it's just not possible for us to know what the original thought of the zoning was. The property itself is on that border between commercial and residentially zoned property. As far as criteria B, whether there's been a change in character over in the area, I think we said that, well, the area has developed some commercially over the years, although it does not appear that there have been many recent changes. The current access situation to this property has stymied some very recent proposals for adding additional commercial uses to the area in the existing commercial zone. The third criteria, is there a need for the proposed rezoning in the area or community? The request is the rezoning's being requested to allow the winery to come into compliance with existing land use codes and to expand to some degree. Whether or not, I would say there's plenty of commercial land in the community, in the city right now. So that's another one that's a little tough, could kind of go either way. The winery certainly feels like there is a need for the rezoning. Under D, it's whether or not are the uses compatible with the surrounding area or uses? Will there be adverse impacts? And/or can any adverse impacts be mitigated? I think we have a number of neighbors here tonight that are going to talk to you about the adverse impacts that they feel that the winery creates to their single-family homes, so I'm going to let them speak to you about that. There are other properties in the area that aren't residential or operated commercially that certainly this use itself would not impact. The thought here, and we'll go into it, is, and what's questionable is, could those adverse impacts be mitigated to the single-family homes in the area? Let's see. The next one is, would there be benefits derived by the community or area by granting the proposed rezoning? Did talk a little bit there about allowing the winery to come into compliance with existing land use codes, expand to some degree. It would allow this locally grown business to operate legally, perhaps expand, which could lead to additional sales tax. Under F, that are adequate facilities available to serve the development for the type of scope of the use? And yes, I think that's an easy one in that utilities currently are available. The one issue of concern with adequate facilities is access, which again, if we move forward, and there's been discussions with CDOT now about how perhaps that access to the properties, all the properties in the area, could be improved to some degree. The next criteria is whether or not it's in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And of course, the comprehensive plan has a myriad of goals. Going through it a little bit, I did find a number that seemed to support the requested rezone. The ones that I would identify as supporting would be to sustain a well-balanced and diverse local economy, to incubate development and expansion of niche goods and services, to improve the image of Cortez as a tourist destination, and to respond to the needs of the agribusiness economy to ensure sustainability of the community's rural character, promoting efforts to establish a year-round marketplace, and encouraging the distribution of local products at local stores. The final one is, the question is, does the proposed change constitute spot zoning? I'm not going to go into a lot of spot zoning. I think our next rezoning, we're going to talk about that for quite a bit. But given that on two sides, a little bit more than two sides, this property is already commercially zoned adjacent to this, I think that we could certainly say that it does not constitute spot zoning. So I think with that, I've also provided for you the agency comments. There were no areas of concern other than the city engineer talking about access and utility easements to the back portion of the property. If that were to be sold separately. The GIS coroner did a little bit more of a deep dive on the use of the parcel, and he noted that it has been used commercially for over 25 years, likely predating the 1996 land use code, and the others were no comments on that. So with all of that, I think staff is recommending that you approve the rezone. I gotta tell you, it's a tough case, given the existing residences. But I did find that you could make the findings for approval of a rezone. And I guess with that, I'll see if you have any questions.
Yeah, that one picture you put up there, and also the one we have here, there's a road that goes right along the highway. Who owns that road? Is that in the city limits?
It's in this road here, or the one up along the highway? Oh, let me go back another slide.
I think you're talking about the frontage road. is that
Frontage
correct?
road, yeah.
the frontage
The
road.
frontage road is owned by CDOT. It's not much of a frontage road,
Is it, do they maintain it?
no. They weren't aware that they owned it until it was brought to their attention.
So if it snows, they never go plow it, is what I'm hearing you say.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Nancy? All right. Well, then we'll open the public hearing on the rezoning. And I would ask that the applicant come forward first and use the microphones over there and state your name for the record, please. Yeah, you got to push that button right down in the middle till it turns green.
James Wooten, Yellow Car Country Wines, owner of the winery and the property of 1345 South Broadway, of the small piece behind us that's 1349 South Broadway that'll remain residential, as well as the owner of the property that's adjacent, 8 acres, that's held by J4G Holdings LLC. Do I keep going? Do you guys ask me questions? I'm sorry, I've never done this before.
You can keep going, and if someone wants to stop you and ask a question, then they'll stop you, okay?
Okay. The winery was established in 2019, in October of 2019 is when we received our final license from the Liquor Enforcement Division to operate. We have operated under Liquor Enforcement Division rules from the beginning. We've never missed a tax payment. Don't do that. Haven't missed excise payments. The expansion that you all see there on that last drawing yes, sir, that one. We have expanded once already. The small concrete patio that we had wasn't big enough to hold the operation, and so then we expanded out to that area that's now in the colored part of your piece of paper.
Excuse me, I do have a question about this drawing. I'm a little confused. Where it says road on the end, is that the frontage road or is that the access road to the residential property north of you?
That's the driveway.
How do you access the residential properties that are just to the north of you? Is that on this drawing at all?
That's straight up that road. It runs
This
beside
thing here?
us.
That's the goes up to the
Yes,
neighbors?
yeah, that road is owned by J4G Holdings LLC per the drawings that were provided when we bought the property. The adjacent houses to the north drive on that road by easements that were established long before we showed up.
That was good.
Okay, thank you.
That was going to be my question. Is there an easement then that they can get to their property?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Not fully understanding how rules between the city and the state worked. The reason we were expanding and moving along the way we were was because everything that we have done, we cleared through the Liquor Enforcement Division, and of course that controls the alcohol portion of what takes place on the property. As Nancy pointed out, and we do not deny, we did receive a zoning violation letter from the city, and again, didn't realize the differences between city codes and state codes, and in talking with the Liquor Enforcement Division, I was left with the apparently wrong impression that, you need to obey the city rules too, also, as well as the Liquor Enforcement Division rules. Out of those discussions, then comes this request to you all to allow us to zone commercial, and to be able to continue to expand the winery, not so much in land at this point, but to be able to expand the winery in operation, in people, in things that we can do on the property that right now under the land-based, home-based code that we are under now doesn't allow.
So is your liquor license through the city then?
Yes, sir. No, all of our licenses are through the state. We do have our city sales tax license, but the city of Cortez, at this point, does not issue alcohol permits for wineries. That's all that's all at state level.
I have several random questions, if you're done for now. I was just out there yesterday and looked at the property, and I'm curious about that chunk of land between where the winery is and the frontage road, that undeveloped chunk of land there. Is that yours, or whose is that?
Yes, sir, it's mine. It's owned by a different company that we established for things, for expansion that we would like to do later on down the road. That property is held by J4G Holdings, LLC.
And that's zoned commercial already?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, let's see. Then in your letter that you sent to us, you said that we are planning future projects, et cetera, proposed RV park, winery, and production facility, and future condos going up. Where would those future developments take place? On the property that we're talking about now, or between you and the highway, or where are those?
If you were to look up at Nancy's map that she has up there, we own eight of the 12 acres that red piece on the, looking at it from my way, on the left-hand side of the frontage road. Canopy Tree Service owns the first 4 acres of that land. It's right up against, I still call it the Johnson Building. That comes down 4 acres, and then our 8 acres picks up from there and comes down and does the swoop.
Okay. And then I'm sorry. I have another question then about access for neighbors to the property. So since the current road, which we discussed here, they have an easement, but on an aerial map, and when I was out there, I saw this other sort of road-looking thing coming down from the residential property down to the frontage road. Is that accessible? Is that usable? Is that something people can use?
At this point, it is usable. It does not have an easement to be used, and part of our expansion, that road would probably come under discussion.
Okay. I'm sorry, and the final question I have then. So then, if this expansion goes on, the residential properties would have to go through the winery, and on this map, it doesn't show, but on the other side of this road, that's your parking area, correct? What I saw when I was out there the other day? You have the patio here, and then the access to the residential property, and you have a parking area here?
Yes, sir.
Right, so the neighbors have to go through your winery property, through the business, in order to access their home, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is the easement that is currently on the books that we're not interested in changing.
All right, thank you, that's all I have.
Following up on his question, that makeshift road that we're showing, it's on your property, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody have any? Did you have some question?
So for clarification, you're asking to rezone the entirety of 1345 South Broadway from residential to commercial, highway commercial?
Yes, ma'am.
And then at some point, you would want to subdivide it so that part of it could be left residential, or would you?
1345, at this point, looking down road, would stay commercial. You'll notice when you look at the map, there's a little bitty square piece up in that top left-hand corner. That is actually a separate address that's called 1349 South Broadway. And we own 1349, 1345, and now the property that runs alongside the frontage road. We own all of that.
Okay. So are you aware that you'd have to get a conditional use permit to use your property as a residence if you rezone it to highway commercial?
No, I was under the impression that because it was an already existing structure, it would be grandfathered in.
It could be grandfathered in that the use, but it's a use. The structure itself clearly is a commercial building originally. I'm not sure how that would work. I guess if it would be a continuation of a legally non-conforming use. Hi. Boo. Did you hear?
It's a good point. A single-family home is a conditional use in the commercial zone. Given that it's already there, I had told the applicants that I thought that could stay as a legal non-conforming use.
Okay.
But that we would still wanted the site plan review to go through, so process-wise, you could add the conditional use permit for the
During the site plan
single-family
review.
home
Okay.
and bring everything in legally at the same time.
Okay. Thanks.
Are there any issues with CDOT for access to the place, and CDOT didn't know they owned that frontage road that you're aware of?
CDOT says they didn't own the frontage road. I find it hard to believe that they didn't know they did not own the frontage road, because there are at least 4 aprons off of 491-160, that north-south corridor, onto the frontage road south of our property, as well as north of us. You have McElmo. And when they repaved that entire section of road from the Johnson Building all the way down to the County Road G intersection, they repoured the aprons. And it was even a second project. First they rebuilt the highway, then they came back and rebuilt the aprons. And it doesn't seem to me like the state would allow money to be spent to rebuild an apron if they didn't know it was there. But obviously that's an assumption and a question on my part. We are under discussion with CDOT on how exactly all of us that live on that frontage road, and Nancy and Rachel and I have gone round and round with CDOT on where's the approval process for these aprons to be used, because it's not just us, it's like 7 other businesses, it's a 14-house subdivision. There is a lot of stuff off of the highway that uses the frontage road to get to work as well as get to home. Like I say, the conversations with CDOT are ongoing.
Yeah, I would imagine that if, say, somebody else wanted to come in and buy that property and put in a business and it's zoned commercial, they'd have some CDOT issues, would be my guess, but I don't know. Since you've had discussion with them, that's good, I guess, but. Thank you. Anybody else?
Say any other, I can talk about the winery all night, but I know y'all don't want to hear it.
We may have questions later, we may call you up, but at this time, we'd like people that speak for or against to come on up and say your name. You can sit down now. Leave that microphone on, though, for anybody else that
Yes, sir.
wants to speak for or against. And try to limit it to 3 minutes, please.
Oh, I don't have unlimited time?
Yeah.
My name is Tammy Lindsay. I reside at 1205 South Broadway, property adjacent to that being proposed. Like to fill in some blanks. Nancy did a great job there with the history. Originally, the planners of our community did an exemplary job. Properties that were subdivided that belonged to Ertels to be zoned residential from North Street, existing behind Steve Keach Motor, all the way down south the city limits, including ours. We purchased our home and built in 1980. We've been there for 42 years. That access off the frontage road is our legal access to our property and the adjoining properties to the north of us. Over the period of time that they have been there, which we didn't know they had this letter of occupancy, of which they've been in violation of. Some of that has been corrected since, but over the past 2 years, it has grown to be quite difficult. From having a restriction of 4 people to a patio, extending out to accommodate a couple dozen or more. We come home last Thursday night to a dozen cars. Those cars aren't just parking in that extended parking lot to the east. They're parking and using and driving in the easement. That is our easement. They cannot use that for parking. We have at times not been able to get into our home because of the blockage of the access of the right-of-way into our driveway. There's RVs, there's fifth-wheelers, there's campers, huge motor homes that frontage road and that driveway cannot accommodate. I've had to wait to get out of my home in the morning. I have photos, if you'd like to see those, of those trucks, RVs blocking the driveway, not allowing us to be able to get in, not allowing emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances to be able to get in to our property. And that is a huge issue. It's a huge safety issue. We won't even go into the noise. Their patio is located a few feet from our property line. The extended patio, when they have live bands, we can't even be there. It is extremely loud. We can't leave there. We just leave. Fortunately, the porta potty has been moved out of the access, and we do appreciate that. That was something I got to look out at my dining room window all summer long. One of the biggest concerns is the access. There is no public access to this property. It's a private drive. It extends west from the state highway frontage road. And all the traffic to this location is funneled to a turn off the highway at the bottom of a blind incline. The speed limit there increases to 55 miles per hour just before the turn, and one of the most dangerous sections of the highway in the city limits. We have lived in this location, as I mentioned, for 42 years and have witnessed and heard countless accidents that have resulted in injury and death. With an increase in the nature of the vehicles attempting to make those turns, it has exponentially increased that danger. I have personally and fortunately avoided collisions as cars have attempted to pass those stopped in the highway trying to make that turn. When you're considering this proposal, I would like for you to take into account not just the direct disruption that it's created for us in the area surrounding us. This is our home. We have built this home. We've put a lot into it. It's nice to go home, have a nice place to relax, and be able to know that you can actually get to it. But I'd also like for you to take into account the safety of the people that travel on that highway. Thank you.
Thank
Would you
you.
like to see these photos?
Sure, sure. Anyone, no, we'll just comment. Anyone else speak for or against? I assume you're against. Anyone else to speak for or against?
There's also some in there of the proximity of the patio to our property line.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Kent Lindsay. I live at 1201 South Broadway, just north of Grant and Tammy's house. This is my brother and sister-in-law. Back almost 100 years ago, my grandfather owned that property and established those residences all along Broadway, clear up, like she said, to Steve Keach Motors. And extends clear down to the duplex on the south end of the property down there. All those residences, including even behind the Wooten residence now, there was a residence that was consumed by a canyon fire that came up in 1999. Almost got our house, Grant Tammy's house, my father's house is just north of there, and there's a 100-year-old barn that sits up there. That's the history. The fires, there's been 3 major fires in that canyon that have come up, and it's primed and ready to go again. But my biggest concern is the access. The running access along the frontage road is less than 20 feet. You can't get 2 cars up and down that road at the same time. It's a single-lane road. We've tried to have, we call the city and ask for maintenance along the road, and they told us it belonged to CDOT. We call CDOT, they told us it belonged to the city. So maintenance along the road is pretty thin. There's a lot of rock surface, and also there is sewer and water utilities in and along that road. And also the little road up through the field you were asking about was established in 1979 when we first built our house up there. We did that out of a consideration to the people in the church so we wouldn't disturb them on Sundays. And that property that we're talking about, to step back, it was given to my uncle by my grandfather for a residence. Well, my uncle built and established the Jehovah's Witness Church there, and thus ensued a family fight. And we'll just leave that where it is. But again, turning lanes, you know, CDOT is going to have to really look at turning lanes, A&D lanes, whatever they want to call them down through there, because as mentioned before, weekly we hear tires screeching where the merge is up there by Chronic Therapy, the new merge, and trucks honking at each other trying to establish this. You need to consider setbacks in a commercial zone going from a residential zone, and take a second look at this. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jedediah Coy, 703 Hartman Road. We live just to the north, on the north side of the Johnson Building from the location discussed.
Did you say north side of the Johnson Building?
Correct, yes, sir. Hartman Road is on the north end of the Johnson Building. I've lived here for, 22 years. I'm a multi-business, multi-service entrepreneur. I know both of the businesses here. I love the fact that when I need a great bouquet of flowers, I know where to go. I know that when I need a great bottle of wine, I know where to go. I also know that starting a business, let me back up. 2015, when I started a TV station, my father and I, my partner was Charles Boyd, but Dad and I actually looked at the hospice building to start the TV station. That didn't pan out. Graciously, the Cortez Cultural Center let us rent a room there where we started the TV channel. That didn't pan out after 3 years, but that's okay. That's kind of beside the point. Sometimes when you start a business, like I did, you start from scratch. You start with the pennies in your pocket, and you grow it. And it doesn't always work out the way that you think. What I'm getting at is the business that I have now, after the result of that, I know both of these businesses have actually sponsored some of the community events I do. They sponsor it with a monetary value. I trade in exchange for, when I'm live streaming, I put up logos and give shout outs about their business. It's important for businesses to be able to work together. And I really hope that the result of this is that the businesses can, at some point, come together and figure things out. I know it's been kind of maybe loud for you folks, and I can honestly take blame of that. That was last Thursday. That was my birthday party. It was at Yellow Car. I do give credit to Jim, though. He shut us down about 7 o'clock. We pushed it a little bit till 7:15 before we came inside. I was playing an acoustic guitar. We're just having fun. We're not loud. Jim's very cognitive of the keeping the pathway open. I know it is kind of different for you guys to have a lot of people there. I understand. I'm really looking forward to the business that they're going to put further closer to the road, which would alleviate the noise and stuff for you guys. I do know that. I think if the rezone happens, it's going to be temporary, that they will utilize it. Again, as a growing business, you have to grow the business, you have to build it, and you have to fund the new building, which would alleviate the sound and noise from the neighbors. You know, the zoning and planning, who knows how long ago the plats were zoned? It sounds like there's a lot of question anyway. It sounds like maybe back when there was a church in there, it should have been zoned commercial. Maybe when it was the hospice, it should have been zoned commercial. I don't know. I'm trying to stay neutral with this. I just want to give a little bit of my opinion and hope and pray that you guys can figure it out and work together. And just remember that if we don't forgive one another and work together, then it's not going to be easy for any of us. And I'm an imperfect person living in an imperfect world. I know what Scripture says, that we're supposed to forgive, and hopefully we can just work together and get things done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you all for being here. I'm Brian Bartlett with Mesa Verde Country, the Tourism and Visitor Information Bureau for the area, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Yellow Car Winery's plans to have this approved, to hopefully get this rezoned, to get the errors from possibly the past fixed and reorganized so that they can move forward. Yellow Car's been an exemplary partner for tourism in our area. They've helped us bring in and secure tourism dollars to the area. They've allowed us to have some opportunities for people to spend time together with other visitors that are outside the area in a setting that's neutral, that's safe, and where they feel good about sharing the information. And through those organic interactions, people have turned other people on to things to do in our area that, as a promoter for Mesa Verde Country, I'm in charge of marketing and communications there. It's very difficult to promote some aspects of what we can offer as a community until you experience it, until you walk through and see it. And a lot of times people will come up from Sand Canyon, from a great experience there, all the way through from Hovenweep, or come down from the Mesa and be heading out towards another direction. They'll meet at the Yellow Car Winery and they'll share the experiences. They'll get very excited about what they hear. Often that will lead to 1 or 2 or even 3 additional days in market, which is what we're all about. And it will also be very helpful because people return, they have that good feeling, and they come back. When we take surveys at the Welcome Center and through Mesa Verde Country, we do find that Yellow Car is mentioned in about the top 10 as far as things to do in the area. Certainly not at the same level as Mesa Verde or some of those other things, but it is a very well-known social opportunity in the area, and it's something that, in our opinion, from a tourist standpoint, has been managed very well. And there has been a lot of process and progress with every decision that's been made there. And I think we've benefited significantly from that. Also, because a lot of what we do in this area is funded by the state of Colorado, which may indeed be at the root of some of this problem to begin with. Yellow Car has been tremendously gracious with the Colorado Tourism Office, with supporting all the missions that we have in our area. When we can't find vendors or people that own and operate businesses to get on board with us and to help us partner for certain events, we can generally go to Yellow Car once we explain the situation. Because of the commitment that they have to the community and the local standing that they have within that travel and visitation community, they've been able to help us get the information and to help us change some of the things that needed to be changed. The only other thing I'd like to mention is that the staff at Yellow Car have operated as ambassadors for events, activities, and merchants who rely on the tourism dollar for a significant part of their annual revenues. And Yellow Car has done this in a fair, concise, and descriptive manner. I see no reason, especially based on attending this meeting here tonight, why that can't continue in the future and why we can't be, as Jedediah so eloquently presented, amenable to our neighbors and all get along in a way that allows us to grow and succeed, have some things that help our economy, and some attractions that really give people a place to go and blow off some steam after a great day in Mesa Verde country. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Connie Coy. I live at 703 Hartman Road in Cortez, just north, Jedediah's mom. We owned the White Eagle Inn and Family Lodge from 06 to 2015. And many times, if I had to come home in the evening when it was dark, or to the motel, and I'm driving down the hill, and I need to slow down to turn in, the semis will hit that light at 7th and the highway, and they say, oh boy, 55, zoom. And so many times they come up behind you, so I get it. The traffic on the highway is scary. And you try to come in out of those frontage road aprons, it's difficult. So there's just a whole thing there. I would love to see the highway speed limit go down. I had the city and the state at that intersection trying to do something to, at 7th and 491 there, to do something to slow that traffic down so they don't get the idea that they can make a beeline out of there. It's bad. I've lived there for 24 years, so, and owned that motel on the highway, so I know. And so there's concerns in both areas for whoever lives or works or has a business along there. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Hi, I'm Wanda Martin. I live at 7399 Highway 160. I'm friends with Tammy and Grant and also with Kent. I'm often up at their places, and I've also been to the winery. The one time that I was at the winery, they had a band. It was very loud. It is right next to Grant and Tammy's backyard, and I know if that was my backyard, there would be, you can't be out there and have peace and quiet when you have that many people next to your yard and a band. So I feel that if you're wanting to move forward with this, that you should look at the adverse effects that it's going to have on the neighbors as well as the problems on the road. I live right on the highway as well, and it's always difficult to get in and out with the speed limit the way it is, and I'm always worried about getting rear-ended when I'm getting in and out of my driveway. So I would hope that you would look at these adverse effects that it's going to have on these people and their lives in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Marla Wooten. I live at 1345 South Broadway in Cortez. You can tell by my accent, I'm not from here. We just moved here. I'm from Louisiana. We moved here, my husband's been here since May. I've been here since August. And I don't know this history. I just moved here and got thrown in. But from living there, it is not just a winery. It is not just a party. We have met homeschool families. We have met people from all over the globe, different countries, medical professionals that are traveling doctors and nurses, businessmen. We have met retired couples that are traveling. This is a place to be happy. This is a place that we have fun. I sing with that band. I'm out there singing, whether the band's there or not. My son is autistic and sensory. He is loud. And He has been yelled at quite a bit by the neighbors from running around, and we've had to put a sign out to slow the car down because my son doesn't have that ability to know consequences. So I've had to put a sign that says, "Slow down, children there." The RVs and campers have a spot for them. When they come in as a harvest host, there's a spot, 2, 4, 5, they know where they're supposed to go. Yes, they're big. It takes a little minute for them to get out. My sister-in-law is paralyzed. She's bedridden. Ambulances have to come quite a bit to get her. There are other ways. The road may not be paved, but there are other ways. Instead of being so closed off, just why not come join us? Have a little fun. We're done. We shut it down about 7:30 to 8. It's not all into the hours. They are not parked. If there's anything there, it's usually if there's not been a point to where the cars have been blocking anything. We are aware. My husband and I work there. We both work there. We are part of it. This is our family. We live there. It's so much more. This is a ministry. When they come in, we don't know what they're dealing with, but let me tell you, they're going to get some wine in Jesus. We have a sign that says, "Jesus turn water into wine." It's part of our ministry. There didn't seem to be a problem with commercial while it was a church or home health. It just seems to be a problem with the Wootons having a winery. And that having my dog and my special needs son out there, I am now having to be out there constantly to make sure that cars slow down because the neighbors do not. And that is my first priority. My son is out there giving people water. My son is 7, and that's his job. He gives people water. He loves playing with the kids. It's not just a winery. We want to grow it for Cortez. We want to bring it to Cortez. We want Cortez to come to us. I moved here to this town because of my husband, my family. The views are amazing, and the people we've met are really great. And we'd like to stay here and have a place for families to come. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for or against? We just need your name. We don't need your address.
My name is Grant Lindsay. I live at 1205 South Broadway, Cortez. Mostly, you come home at night after you've worked all day, you've dealt with everything there is to deal with. You come down a driveway, there's a 30-foot motorhome parked in the middle of the way. You're going, geez, I just want to get home. Get into the driveway. Not all the time, but maybe every other week, there's a band playing out front. It echoes right across, right into our house, loud noise. We had went over 2 or 3 times and asked, hey, tune it down. It's really loud. We did one time went over, and they were having a party. Foul language was blowing out. A lady comes out, and she says, what's your problem? And we says, can you turn it down and cut the foul language out? It says, well, the mayor's here. Would you like to talk to him? And they said, no, we just want you to turn it down. Don't play your power card with us. And it goes on. About every other week, we'll have a band in. And, sometimes you like a little peace and quiet instead of listening to the noise. I like a good band as anybody else. But there's a place. And it seems like the more there is, the more that they move closer to the fence, closer to the fence, closer. Why don't he put that crap out front? You know, put it out in front of his house so he can listen to it inside. You know, move it around on the other side. Why does it have to be
Please
right
speak-
there?
Speak to us, you don't need to
Okay.
speak to...
And, you know, the patio, it started with the patio. We talked with Jim. Great. He says there'll be 2 to 4 people. It's a quiet hobby. I'm not going to do much. It's just going to be a nice hobby I'm starting, and maybe sell retail wine. Sure, that sounds good, you know. I encouraged him all I could do. But before I know it, building a deck on or building a patio on. Pretty soon, it expands further out. And then pretty soon, we have RVs, campers, trailers. And then on top of that, it puts a porta potty out on the corner of the lot. And I'm going, what? Is it they don't have restrooms to take care of their customers or what? I don't know. So, you know, you kind of get tired after a while. That's about what I got to say.
Okay,
Thank you. And thank you for having us.
Anyone else for or against? Okay, Mr. Wooten, would you come back up? He wants to ask a couple questions before I close the hearing.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I was out there yesterday and took a look at the property, and even before we had the hearings tonight and before I heard the testimony, I had some questions of my own. My first question is, why did you choose to put the expanded patio along the fence line as opposed to that large area you have south of the building, which is completely open? Why did you choose to put it along the fence there but the neighbor as opposed to putting it somewhere else away from the neighbors? Was there a rationale for that?
Where the current patio sits, which is just pretend like the orange part's not there, I realize.
Right,
I
yeah, it
realize
goes
that
right
it
up to
is.
the access road, basically, is what it does, yeah.
Through Liquor Enforcement Division regulations that we have to follow, if we were to have run the patio down the house and down the hill and where what we're calling the property of 1349, we would not have been able to have done that because we would have crossed property lines. And the Liquor Enforcement Division frowns on crossing property lines for alcohol operation. It would have required a lot more upgrade because it's all gravel, and so it would have had to have been paid. We would have gone downhill, and through my understanding at the time was through the American Disabilities Act, we would have had to have put in a ramp or something down behind the house onto that square property, and so it would have required a lot more infrastructure than going the direction that we did.
Okay, so let me ask you then, so looking at this map here, where the patio is now, where you have the hay bales and everything out there, on this map is about 1 inch. You've got about 2 inches over here. It doesn't look like you'd be crossing any property lines if you put it to the south. Is that, you're talking about crossing this property line down here, but it looks like there's plenty of room. I could turn my truck around in there. So this, you said you'd cross a property line? I don't see that right here.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood where you were pointing. I thought you were talking about going west toward.
No, I'm talking about
toward the
going
canyon
south,
wall.
just attaching to the south of your building in this 2-inch area as opposed to this 1-inch area right along the neighbor's property line. So it was because you would have to put more infrastructure in there, basically.
It would have required more infrastructure, even if we were to go on to what we call the parking lot.
Okay. And then another thing, when I was there, I noticed, and you can't see it on any of these maps here, but they have put a parking area across the access line. So the patio goes basically up to the west side of the access drive, and there's a parking area east of the access drive. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why did you choose to put the parking area there as opposed to away from your neighbors over here? Was there a particular reason for that? Because it seems when I was there, I was wondering, what about people blocking that? So again, was there a rationale for putting the parking here as opposed to away from the neighbors?
The rationale for putting it on the east side of the road, which is where it's located right now, was we were putting it onto commercial highway land versus, I don't know, ease of build out. Because if we would have put it right there in front of the house, as was pointed out a minute ago, I have a daughter who has a C2 tetraplegia on a respirator, and we do have fire trucks and ambulances, and they have proven they can drive on those roads quite well when they come in to pick her up and have to take her to the emergency room for her medical conditions when they go awry, and so we have to keep that front of the house open for those emergency vehicles to be able to operate.
Okay, then my last question is, if this does not get approved, could you just as easily move the winery to that piece of property you have, which is east of the access road, between the access road and the frontage road? You have a big chunk of property there. Is there something prohibiting you, aside from infrastructure costs on your part, from moving the winery to the other side of that access road, which would take care of the issues that the neighbors have?
Yes, sir. At this point, it all has to do with CDOT. Not to put Nancy and Rachel on the spot, but we've spent hours talking with CDOT, and because we're already there, CDOT says we're grandfathered in to be able to do what we do. But my impression, and I step aside for the ladies to talk if they would like to help answer this question to you. CDOT's making it very, very difficult to be able to go on the other side of that driveway and put in a winery, because that's part of our plan. The future winery will sit down on the point, just about where the bottom, as y'all are looking at the bottom left-hand corner of that square. You can see where the driveway curls in. The new winery will sit right down there in the bottom of that curl, and we want to put it there on purpose so there is distance between all of us.
Okay. And I guess my last question is, when I was there, and again, I saw your patio, and I saw you have it sort of fenced off, you have hay bales there, et cetera, but I didn't see anything really delineating the parking area to keep people off of the access road. And again, even before testimony tonight, that sort of bothered me that you would have the patio well delineated, but you did not have the parking area sort of roped off or cordoned off. So I just have a concern about, being a good neighbor, but thank you.
And we try really, really hard to keep that road open. And yes, when our RVs are pulling in, we have to get them parked. It doesn't take long, and we get them onto their spots, and the road's wide open.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Anyone else for or against? Close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment?
Yeah, we'll have a discussion.
I feel like we're talking about the site plans right now, which that's supposed to come back to us later, and that we need to address the issue before us, which is whether we're going to rezone or not.
Nancy, would that be correct, that the site plans would come to us or to council?
Should the rezoning get approved, the site plan would suggest come back through to you and then on to council.
So make sure I got this process right. It doesn't matter whether we approve or disapprove, it's still going to go to council. And if council then approves it, I mean, ours is just a recommendation. So if council approves it, then the site plans would come back through us?
Yes. And I guess what I'd suggest you focus it on as far as the criteria. So, where is it? Criteria D for a rezone is, are the proposed uses compatible with the surrounding area or uses will there be adverse impacts, and/or can any adverse impacts be mitigated? I would say that the site plan process is where you would start talking about how to mitigate those impacts. But now I want you need to think, given this criteria, on is it possible or not to mitigate those impacts?
Any other comment, Commissioner?
Yeah, if it were to be rezoned, or any property getting rezoned where it's abutting a R1 district, are there requirements for site plan approval to make sure that there's buffering and other kinds of noise mitigation as part of the approval process, as well as traffic? But those two impacts, I was thinking specifically, just because you're dealing with residential right next to commercial.
Yes.
Okay. I have a question for Patrick, if you don't mind me asking about the photos.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Patrick, since I guess there's photographs that we didn't get as part of our packet that were just submitted during the public hearing process, do those need to be now submitted on record as part of the public hearing process?
Yes, any documentation that you receive during the public hearing should be made part of the record. If the submitter wants the photos back, you should make a copy of them so you can place it in the official record.
Okay.
You don't need to make any formal announcement.
Okay.
Other than, obviously, if you receive a letter tonight,
Yeah.
I would read you don't have to read it out loud, but read it and allow all the commission members to read it as well. And certainly the photographs are part of the testimony and evidence that are being submitted, so you want everybody to have the opportunity to look at them.
Okay.
And then they should be copied and put in the official record.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, comments-wise, or? Guess I would entertain a motion then.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that I am very sorry for the neighbors and what you're going through. However, again, I feel that isn't necessarily in the scope of what we're reviewing tonight. The property has been used for commercial before. It has commercial around it. I mean, I feel like it's meeting the Cortez Comprehensive Plan, so I would make a motion to approve the rezoning.
Is there a second to that? And again, that's just to recommend to the council that they rezone.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to rezone. Any further discussion?
I would just like to say that, as noted earlier, I don't think this rezoning meets criteria D. Are the proposed uses compatible with the surrounding area or uses? Will there be adverse impacts? I feel there's already adverse impacts because the owners have exceeded the requirements of a family or home business, and if this is approved, that those adverse impacts will be even greater given the size of the road, the traffic to the highway, and the problems with the neighbors that have been instituted recently. So I'm going to vote against it because of that. I don't think this use is compatible with the surrounding area, and there will be adverse impacts.
And I guess that would come under where it says mitigate the impacts.
Correct, yes.
Motion on the table. Any other discussion? We'll proceed to vote.
Scorts,
No.
Weiss,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is another Nancy comments. Let's see, what happened to my? No. I lost my. Yeah, the next item is application from Donette Hedgewood. And Nancy, would you give us some info? Oh. Jeez. Lost my stupid agenda. Oh, there we go. Is your mic on?
Scoot closer to her.
Our next request is also a request to rezone, in this case, a .59 acre parcel located on the southwest corner of North Chestnut and West Empire. Oh, it's not showing again. Right? The parcel is currently vacant, and it is zoned R1. The request is to rezone it to R2, which would allow for multifamily uses on the property. The site is bounded on the north and south by single-family homes, currently developed and zoned R1, on the west by the Rust Mobile Home Park, which is zoned R1, but is a non-conforming property zoned R1. It's an existing mobile home park. If it would come up on the screen, which it's not, you could see that it's a developed mobile home park. Commercially zoned property is to the northwest, closer to the highway. I'm not going to go over the issues for the criteria for rezoning again in detail. Maybe I think I'll just discuss through those. This property is located in somewhat of an unusual transition area of the city. Properties to the immediate north, south, and east are all appropriately zoned and developed as single-family residential. The current R1 zoning would allow for this parcel to be subdivided into 3 single-family lots. However, the property is immediately adjacent to the nonconforming use of an older mobile home park, making this property much less desirable for single-family development. It is for sale and has been for a while, just to note. The request to rezone the property from R1 to R2 would allow for single-family duplex or multifamily development. 4 single-family lots could be developed under R2, 6 duplex units total, so that's 3 duplex structures, or 8 townhouse-style units, potentially. These are maximums. Should affordable housing be proposed under the newly approved code amendment, a maximum of 12 units could be developed. Of note, manufactured homes and parts are not allowed in the R2 zone district. So going through the criteria, again, it's not possible to determine whether the property was owned in error, but it appears unlikely. It's on 3 sides with R1, actually 4 sides, with R1 zone properties, 3 sides with the developed single-family homes in conformance with the zoning. That older mobile home park located west is considered legal nonconforming to the existing R1 zoning. Perhaps that was done in an attempt to encourage redevelopment. It's hard to know at this point. The neighborhood does not appear to have been experiencing much change in recent years, except perhaps for the deterioration of the property to the west, which, given its nonconforming status, is likely to continue. There does appear to be a need in the neighborhood for more of a transition from the highway corridor and that mobile home park to the developed single-family homes to the east. The recent housing study for Cortez area does demonstrate a need for additional housing opportunities, especially for multifamily development which is generally develops at more of an affordable level. The existing owner has had the property listed for sale and has had interest from several individuals interested in developing it for multifamily, but not for single-family homes, hence their request to rezone the property. The area is a mix of land use, including both single-family homes and existing mobile home park. Commercial properties are nearby. Feel like a small multifamily development, if well-designed with adequate parking, could be considered compatible with the surrounding area. The rezoning to allow for multifamily development in the midst of a housing crisis should provide the dual benefits to the community of providing for additional housing and likely spurring development of a vacant parcel. While any housing proposed on the site is not guaranteed to be affordable, most often multifamily development is sold or rented at the lower end of market rates. Criteria F is whether adequate facilities are available and utilities are available, and we'd say yes. For small multifamily development, water, sewer access, and all other utilities are available. Given its location as a proposed infill project, all other services, including schools and public safety, are also available. As far as comprehensive plan criteria, I found a number of goals and policies I feel like this rezone would meet. Promoting infill opportunities within the corporate limits to preserve open space surrounding the city while making the best use of land within the city. Encourage infill development on vacant land, which will complement the established character of the neighborhood. Strongly encourage new development proposed on surplus, vacant, or underutilized land throughout the city when the development is appropriate for the area and complies with the land use code. Encourage expansion of the housing supply within the city to meet the needs of current and future residents. Strongly encourage the development of new housing on surplus, vacant, and underutilized land throughout the city. And that went farther with appropriate incentives, zoning regulations, and development standards. And finally, in addition to single-family homes, promote the development of new duplexes and multifamily housing opportunities for families. So the last criteria is spot zoning. Let's talk about that a little bit, because this will result in a spot of multifamily zoning. You can look to the northwest, and this isn't coming up at all, so we're just gonna, when I close it, it comes up. So maybe we can talk from that. So that small spot to the northwest is commercial zoning. Given the non-conforming status of that mobile home park, even though it's zoned R1, feel like this still is an appropriate use and not of the land consistent with the neighborhood and could be not be considered spot zoning. So with that, I think I'm available if you have. I'm ready to answer any questions. Staff is recommending approval of the rezoning of the 0.5 acre parcel.
I have a question. Is there a difference in the height requirement for R1 and R2? Are they the same, and what is the height?
I think there is a difference, but let me look it up. I don't know.
Okay. And then also, is there an equivalent of city lots on this property, or is it just a one plot?
Right now, it's one lot, but I was saying that if you did try and develop it into single-family, you could get 3 lots.
3 lots, thank you. And then my last question, while you're looking that up, I guess I don't understand, under the alternatives that we can propose, I don't know the difference between number 1, that says the commission can recommend the council approve this, blah, blah, and then number 4, the council can recommend that council approve this.
No, you're right, there isn't any difference.
What's the difference between those two, number 1 and number 4?
There isn't any difference.
There isn't, thank you, all right, I got one.
The height is the same in R2 and R1.
And what is the height?
35 feet.
Thank you, all right. That's all I have.
I guess I'd like to address the spot zoning. If the use is still residential and you're really just increasing the density, is it still considered spot zoning because you're not switching it to like a commercial or a different impact? It's still within that same family of residential uses, although there are quite a few, I noticed, new exciting conditional uses that could get approved that wouldn't in R1. But what is the common thought process amongst planners these days regarding that because I know some communities are even just getting rid of R1 single-family zone districts altogether to deal with housing.
Well, state of the art would encourage a more mix of housing throughout the community, and a lot of communities feel that the single family, single lot zoning should be done away with. I think you could make that case, but I think I don't know if Pat wants to define spot zoning for us, but I would define it more that an incompatible use that is solely for the benefit of an existing landowner. And in this case, since we found so many criteria as to why it could benefit the community as a whole and why it might be considered compatible, I don't really feel that it would be spot zoning. You want to talk to it, Pat?
Well, and I would just add that spot zoning generally occurs where a change in the zoning occurs that is different than the existing zoning in the area. So if everything else is one type of zoning and you change one parcel strictly, as Nancy said, to benefit the owner of that parcel without necessarily considering how the community is transitioning and how the existing zoning allows for that, then that's considered spot zoning, which is not legal. But I think the surrounding zoning on this would support what is being talked about.
So it's residential now, and it would still stays residential, and that probably wouldn't be considered spot zoning. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Okay.
If you were trying to put commercial in the middle of all residential,
Right, gotcha.
and no other commercial in the general vicinity, then that might be a problem.
I could see where, depending upon what they want to put in there, parking might be an issue for number of spaces and all that sort of requirement, but that's not our problem. Any other questions for Nancy before we open public hearing? We'll open the public hearing on this situation. Anybody speak for or against? Oh, applicant first, yeah, I'm sorry. Where's the other mic? Is it still on, green light?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, applicant.
I'm Marty Spitzer. I represent Donetta Hegwood in
Okay.
this situation. It's a large lot. It's really hard to sell it as a residential one-family home. In all honesty, anything would enhance the perception of this neighborhood, even if it was, you know, a duplex or affordable housing, or, and you know, your standards and your permits are going to mandate what can and can't happen with this building. And it's going to have to go before architectural review and that kind of stuff. So I really think, like I said, anything at this point would enhance that neighborhood and that corner. And we've had a hard time selling that large of a lot to somebody who wants to put a single-family residence. It's a large, large lot in a great location that, you know, could be a real asset to the perception and the ambiance of that you know, that area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Brian Bartlett with Mesa Verde Country. Again, just very briefly, I want to underscore and submit for your consideration how important the housing situation is for the people that we represent at Mesa Verde Country. Our constituents are primarily hotel people, restaurants, shops, attractions, events, and all the other cultural activities that we have here. What we learned very sadly over the course of this previous summer is that no less than 3 of our largest hotels in Cortez were not able to house employees. They were not able to find any kind of housing for their associates. They actually, in one circumstance, the general manager took 3 employees into his personal home and allowed them to live there over the course of the summer. Obviously, it helped him a lot, helped them a lot as well. Not exactly the best model for doing that type of thing, and there are a lot of problems that could come with that. It was handled professionally, so it was great, but it's not what we want to be known for and not the best response for that. We also had 2 other hotel owners in the area, one with the largest hotel in the area. Technically, it's in the county, but it's on the very east end of town. They own another property that's in the city limits of Cortez, and they converted a good percentage of their rooms to employee housing for both hotels. This comes at tremendous expense and a tremendous loss of operational ability, profitability, and long-term operational compliance for a hotel, because obviously if you have a space in a building, you want to rent that to the public. That's what the model is built on. The reason that I'm taking the time to mention this, and I don't want to bore everybody, but I just want to underscore the fact that Rachel Marchbanks has been exceptional with bringing in a lot of housing opportunities in ways that people here haven't thought of much previously. A lot of the work with the derelict hotels has been wonderful. That's going to give us a lot of future sustainable housing. Primarily, I'm talking about multifamily housing, and in this particular example, especially because of the mobile home park that sits just behind, this would be an excellent transition as you go off the highway or off the road and into that area to go through some multifamily housing. It would give us a lot more density in that area, and it would probably be something that a few employees would be able to live in, and a lot of other people as well, and it would come as a tremendous benefit for us. So anytime there's something that comes up like this as far as housing, Mesa Verde Country is going to advocate on behalf of that. We thank you that you're addressing it. We thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak for or against? Did you have any questions you wanted to ask me? We'll close the public hearing. Any comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I have one comment. If the preference of any of the commissioners is to make a motion to approve, I would remind you that you have a draft resolution in your packet, and the action that you would be taking would be to approve the resolution which recommends approval of the rezoning to the City Council. So as you're formulating your motion, remember that you want to approve a resolution that recommends approval of the rezoning. And likewise, if the preference is to make a motion to deny or make a recommendation to deny the rezoning, we would have to provide you with a resolution to that effect. And so I would encourage you, if that's the direction you want to go, that you include the reasons with reference to the criteria in the zoning code as to why you're recommending a denial. I think on the last one, we had one opposing vote, and I think he did a very good job of clarifying why his vote was going to be to recommend denial. And so I would encourage you that you function or fashion your motion in that same manner.
Do you want us to read the whole resolution?
No, you can recommend, because it's already labeled. It's resolution number 12, series 2022. Now, you can obviously add additional basis for an approval if you have some, but the staff has prepared a sample proposed resolution in the event you want to approve the rezoning or recommend approving the rezoning.
Thank you. I guess I would entertain a motion.
Can I practice this motion on you? Oh, hey, looky there.
Oh, there you go.
Hey. I make a motion that Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of resolution number 12, series 2022. Oh, wait, no, let me back up. No, we're not making a recommendation. I make a motion that Planning and Zoning Commission approves resolution number 12, series 2022, recommending approval of rezoning of a 0.59 acre parcel located on the southwest corner of North Chestnut Street and West Empire Street, also known as CRSP Edition, lots 2 through 8, block 1, book 2, and the rest of it. I guess I'll keep going. Book 6112, page 165 to 66, from R1 residential single family to R2 residential multifamily.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Proceed to vote.
Levy,
Yes.
Weiss,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Next item is new business.
We had to take a quick intermission, so just give us 60 seconds, if you don't mind.
Okay, or do we need 3 minutes, commissioners?
Just take 3 minutes.
We'll have a... Nancy, we were about to take a 3-minute break. Are you ready to go?
I can get ready to go. We'll see if, I'm going to go without.
Well, let's go ahead and take a 3-minute break. Set that timer, where's that dude at? We'll end the brief intermission and continue on. Nancy, new business?
Our third item is a application for site plan and special exemption to parking requirements for the former Mesa Verde Inn located at 550 and 640 South Broadway. The property has been purchased by Zuma Apartments LLC, present here, who are proposing to reconfigure or convert the existing motel property into long-term rental apartments, a theme we've just heard. They applied for and were granted variances by the Board of Adjustment to both the percentage of commercial uses required on the ground floor and unit size to allow for conversion of those existing motel rooms to apartment living. This was back in June when they had the property only under contract. They have now purchased the property, and after doing more detailed site work, there is an additional request for variances that will be heard by the Board of Adjustment. The additional request, it concerns only the size of units. I'm bringing this before you before that variance, with the understanding that if that variance is not granted, those units could not be converted to full residences. The Board of Adjustment has already granted one variance down to 350 square feet from the required 500. The current request brings a few more units down below that requirement. Generally, site plans are only required for new development or changes in use that would intensify the impacts on the property. In this case, it could be argued that permanent residence would create less impact than the transient or overnight residence that a motel generates. However, if the change of use results in changes in traffic or the proposal involves deviations or variances from applicable development standards, the site plan review is required. In this case, the applicant is proposing to add parking. However, they will still not meet the full parking requirements of the city code, and they are requesting special exceptions to the parking requirements for this to allow the conversion to go ahead. I think everyone knows where the site is. It is bounded by commercial properties with several residential properties in the general area. I delineated there the variances that were already granted by the Board of Adjustment, but going over the issues, the purpose of the site plan is to ensure compliance with all regulations, and I've stated out looking at what you're looking for in the site plan review. Really, the only issue of concern with this project and the major reason for requiring the Planning Commission review is parking. Motels have a much lower parking requirement, so that the conversion to full-time residential living results in the need for additional parking. The applicant has added parking where reasonable, but the application still does not meet the minimum parking requirements of the code. Under section 5.02 of the code, a residential structure with more than 30 units is required to provide 2 spaces per unit, regardless of the size of the unit, and also 2 loading spaces. The commercial uses on site have their own parking requirement. While these uses are not proposed to change at this time, they are apparently short already of the required parking by 4 spaces. There are 20 spaces there, and the requirement would be 24. And here was my note. I couldn't get the applicant's proposal to add up, so check them out. But they're proposing a total of 90 parking spaces for the residential uses, and there are 20 existing spaces for the commercial. They have proposed that studio units as proposed only, I went through over by the way they have broken it up. So they're proposing 20 studio apartments. The parking requirement would be 40. They're proposing 20 spaces, or 1 space per studio apartment, which seems kind of reasonable. There's 10 one-bedroom units. Again, the parking requirement is for 2 spaces per unit. They're proposing, in this case, 30 spaces for the 10 one-bedroom units, which would be a 1.5 spaces per unit. 26 two-bedroom units, that would require 54 spaces. Their application states that they're providing 54 spaces for the 2-bedroom units. There is 1 3-bedroom unit. They propose 3 spaces. The requirement's only 2, so they're proposing 1 extra for that. And then the commercial is really no change. They're required to have 24 spaces. They're proposing 20. When you add that all up, I added the difference in deficits, come up with a deficit of 33 spaces. In this case, they did add parking wherever was reasonable in areas that are currently paved and reasonable for parking. We should note that there are other areas on the property that could possibly be used for parking, including the current pool area, which they're proposing to fill. And then there's a large green space area in the back that has vehicular access to it, could be used for parking. They also own parcels to the south that could be used for parking, but they have preference for those spaces to add storage units on the properties to the south. They would prefer to keep the space to the east that is currently a large green space available for residents' recreation, and they're proposing to convert the pool area to a playground area for children that reside at the complex. Those seem like pretty valuable uses, much more valuable than paving over for parking that may or may not be used. I just go over, there were other comments provided by the agencies. I'm not going to read through them, but I provided those for you. There are some concerns about how the access works and whether fire access. Parks and Rec weighed in a little bit oddly on the parking rather than the green space. I guess I'll just go from there to the recommendation. Staff is recommending approval of the site development plan and the special exemptions for the parkings. I did provide some conditions, though. The typical ones, that they meet all requirements of utility providers and city departments, that they provide the appropriate construction drawings and it be approved by the building official and city engineer and a building permit. And then I added a third that says, should parking become a problem in the future, the applicant will propose additional spaces in either the adjacent properties or existing green spaces on the property. A revised site plan would be required to be submitted to the city and reviewed by the Planning Commission, City Council, should those revisions or additional parking be deemed necessary.
Any questions for Nancy?
Yes, I need help with math. So the table you have here that has use, parking required, parking proposed, and the difference, the deficit.
Right.
So the first column where it says parking required comes to 140 spaces. The second one, on your sheet, it says 110 spaces, but when I count that up, it's 127, which would lead a deficit of 13, yet you come up with 4 spaces as a deficit. So how do you get 4 spaces a deficit
I came up as 33 spaces as the.
But in the narrative above, while these uses are not proposed for change, at this time they are currently short of required parking by 4 spaces.
Right,
So that's currently before the,
just for the commercial part.
oh, okay, all right. So as of right now, you think they're how many spaces short?
33.
So they want a variance to not have these additional 33 spaces, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I thought it was just 4. Thank you.
I have a math problem too.
I did too.
Oh, good. So where it says 10 one-bedroom units, required 20 spaces, and they're proposing 30. But then you say that there's a deficit of 10, but wouldn't that be a plus 10?
Correct. I saw the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, those are, oh, you're right. But then their numbers didn't add up to 110, so I didn't know what to do with that. You have the answer? Okay.
Yay! Whoops. Are you ready for that?
We'll open the public hearing, speak for or against, and answer any questions, I guess. Applicant first for the hearing.
I wrote, doesn't add.
Hello, my name is Craig Weiss. Hey, I'm Oliver Hart.
And I'm Monique Weiss.
Oliver Hart.
You can turn on the other mic, too.
Oh, the shorter one. Okay, yes, so you want to answer the math question? Yeah, great, cheers. So the way we got to our numbers was studio.
Near the microphone.
Sorry. We simply ran studios. Every studio gets 1 place, every 1 bedroom gets 1.5, every 2 gets 2, and every 3 gets 3. That was how we run our simple numbers. That equaled 90 places, divided by 57 units. That's an average of 1.58 per the whole complex. 1.57. Rounded, 7, 8. Yep, that's how we got our numbers.
Any plans on the restaurant, that's the building that's there?
So the restaurant is planned to be a restaurant at some point. Then the majority of everything else is going to be a laundromat that is going to be in use for the 57 units that we're obviously adding to the market in that area.
And then the remaining space will be our office and our maintenance area.
Is that the current office?
No.
What will happen to that building that's the current office?
That will be turned into the 3-bedroom unit.
The reason we've tried not to have anything to do with the green area is for simple reasons. Getting rid of a green area to put a hard surface is massively not on our agenda when there's already cornhole, there's volleyball, there's activities there that the community needs, obviously, as opposed to parking when we've got 1.78 on average for the whole unit as it is.
So when you considered the parking spaces, did you count the spaces by the restaurant as parking for the tenants?
No, that is just for the commercial.
Then there's another area between the restaurant and between the office. There's quite a large, wide driveway. Can you put parking spaces down the center of that?
They are currently there.
There's like 3, I believe.
So is that in this proposal, those down, just 3 down the center?
No, I believe
Just in this
there's,
triangle.
no, I believe there's 8 there.
Okay, sorry.
4 for commercial, 4 for residential.
We're using those ones as much as we can.
So that's included in this?
Yes, and if you look at the site plan, you would see that on there as well. I don't know if you guys had the site plan on hand.
Well, since we're just asking questions, what about the west side of the pool? Between the west side of the pool and those other units, seems like there could be parking along that? Nope.
No, that needs to be a fire lane.
Thank you. And then finally, what about, and I went out there, what about the area back by that storage shed and the picnic area where they have picnic tables way in the back? Can that be parking?
Are you speaking about the green space in the very back of the property?
No, I'm talking about south of the swimming pool there you have a storage shed and they have picnic tables back there, 2 or 3 red picnic tables on a green area?
I'm unsure which space you're talking about, I think.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to pull the
Do we have
plans
any
up now.
overheads of the area, Nancy?
Well, let's see if I can make it work this time. You do have a site plan.
People like that weird carport. I think so, yeah.
It's, I'll try and pull it up. Not that it worked last time, but. Log back in.
I'm talking about.
Can we go up and look?
Yes, okay.
This area here, there's some picnic tables and a green space back in here in this area. There's a storage shed right there.
So that area is going to be primarily for dogs, that we allow for the tenants to have pets, because that is always a big requirement for tenants, especially in all of our other units that we have around the area, is to have pets. And if we can have a designated pet area and they can poop in that area and they can pick it up, instead of in the other green space where we plan on having activities going on. So that space will not be used as parking, and then the gravel area behind that will be rented to the auto shop that is our neighbor as well, as he has about 12 cars there today when we saw.
Yeah.
Given everything, thank you, Nancy. Given everything that we've discussed, you said if it becomes a problem down the road, you can create some. Where would you create those spots if it becomes a problem down the road?
Yes, so we are not currently moving on the storage units right away. This is something that would be a few years or more down the road that we would install them at that point. So we would be leaving that area somewhat open for a few years. And then even with that said, there is still more space for us if we absolutely need to have access off of 7th to still come into the apartments, and then have parking, that access road would come in, and to the right of there would be the storage units, and then to the left would be the available parking if we absolutely had to. It would start to get tight a little bit down.
So let me try and clarify what I just heard. So you're saying if down the road parking's an issue, you would have an access road off of 7th, and you would create parking on the adjacent lot? Is that correct?
So Nancy, if you zoom in right there, right there.
Right there?
Yep, right there, please. And then down. Yep, okay, so right there, there is a hair salon right there. We own that parcel to the right where you see those cinder blocks. Those will be removed and will be accessed for the tenants as is to access the property, so they can access it off of 7th, or they can access the property off of Broadway. As the 7th Street will probably be the most used access, just as, instead of doing a U-turn at the light, most people just take the left there and access the property. And then so on there, to the right of the cinder blocks will be the storage, and then to the left of that, we can still have additional parking added in there.
So are these units for rent, or are they for sale?
For rent.
They're long-term rentals for the city of Courtesville.
I guess as far as the parking goes, I would surmise you'd have a hard time renting them if people didn't have a place to park.
Right, so in all of the properties that we own in the surrounding area, which are mostly hotel conversions, as this one is, our tenants don't use all of the parking spaces. Even at our 30 unit, at our 48 unit, at our 145 unit, parking spaces are mostly vacant. Maybe 60 to 70% are actually used, as these aren't super high-end apartments that are going to be rented to people that always have vehicles. A lot of our tenants, they are using public services or biking or walking to the places that they're going. Some of them do have cars, but most of them, a good amount do not. And with the parking that we have provided, one space per studio is very reasonable, and most people living in a one bedroom, most likely one person, but possible two, which is why we've done the 2.5 or 1.5, and the two bedrooms. Most likely they still only have one car just because of the class of tenant that we have. But if they have two, the parking spaces are available for each and every single unit, as well as the 3-bedroom.
And then the current pool, you're talking about creating that in the playground for the kids. Why not have the playground in the back, in that green space area where all that sidewalk is in the back, and you have all your facilities back there, and you just have adequate parking in the front if you just use the pool and that whatever area it is to the east as parking spaces?
Right, so for 2 reasons. That space, that green space back there already has horseshoes back there, as well as the volleyball court. So those things are already in place in those areas. And then there is also a gazebo right there by the pool, as you saw, which is a great place for our residents to be able to gather, to barbecue, and then the kids can go play right there while the parents are able to hang out and be able to watch over their kids at the same time.
Another thing that was brought to my attention by the structural engineer and architect is the entrance into that via the north of that block is incredibly tight in theory when you're there. So getting parking back there may not even actually be feasible.
Even if it were on a diagonal. And pardon me, you can move horseshoe pits pretty easily.
But over the north of that top right block,
Yeah.
getting a vehicle into that with the tightness of that was advised that it was very, very tight.
Oh, on the extreme northern end of the property.
Yeah.
you mean.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not actually-
I understand that, right.
Yeah.
That's why I was suggesting move the playground in the back and cover the pool and make that parking areas.
That would add approximately 5 parking spaces.
Yes, and it was just the central hub of having barbecue and that area for everyone in the middle of the
And
community.
safety for children in a central area.
Any consideration for visitor parking?
With our parking being at 1.57 and the surrounding areas being way closer to 1, we've got numerous photos of all of the apartment buildings we own still having so much excess parking at the times of the day when people come home from work and before they leave from work. So we're very, very confident there's still going to be heaps of excess parking.
And we can go into the codes as well for the number of parking spots.
Right, so for the code, it does require that we have solid parking spaces, or solid ground, paved ground for the parking spaces for our tenants, right? So with that being said, we still have this area where if parking does become an issue, we would be able to pave, but for the time being, if everything is already occupied, the visitors are not having to require a solid surface to be able to park. They would be able to park there if, that's a big if, it was an issue. And if it does become an issue again, we can pave that area.
It's been my experience in the past that if you have a unit, you have assigned parking spaces, like mine are B1 and B2, and if I come home and the neighbors have parked in there, that's an issue. Will these be assigned parking spaces, or will it be at random for granted?
No, they will not be assigned parking spaces, but the studios, 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms, they will all only be allowed 1 vehicle, or in the 1 bedrooms will be allowed 2 vehicles, but they will have to report that so that we can track how many parking spaces are actually being used.
So you make that a condition of renting a place, is how many vehicles you have. That'll be in the application, and you have to approve it? Is that what you're saying?
So they are only allowed to have 2 vehicles. If they put, they have 3 vehicles, we'll let them know they're only allowed to park 2. It's up to them what they want to do with the 3rd one. It's not necessarily that we will deny their application if they have 3 vehicles, but they need to figure out what they want to do with their 3rd vehicle. It won't be allowed at our property, essentially.
So will there be parking stickers given to the tenants, or how do you
definitely.
monitor that? Yeah.
Yes, most definitely.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Anyone else to speak for or against?
I'm so sorry to be here for a third time, but thank you for your patience. Brian with Mesa Verde Country. Again, with regard to this specifically, before being blessed with the opportunity to join Mesa Verde Country Tourism, I did do 33 years in hotel and resort management all around North America and parts of this hemisphere. I would say that, at least for the people that work in those types of establishments, over the course of the time, I was able to help dozens and dozens and dozens of my associates buy their first car, their first vehicle. In some cases, that led to them buying their first house or apartment. Ownership is what we're all about. We try to promote that heavily. What I did learn is that not everybody comes to the table with 1+ vehicles. Some people come with 0. The market that this is looking to fill as far as a housing opportunity traditionally does not have the full capacity of vehicles that you might expect. And so with regard to the vehicle situation in specific, I don't see that as being a huge problem at this point in time. Obviously, it could change over time. I don't know. It sounds like there are some good plans to back that up. I would say as well, keeping the pool area and the gazebo area as it currently exists and using that as the hub or the focal point for the community is probably the best thing going, because people can see most of that area from their rooms. They can see it from their apartments. They can keep an eye on the children. There won't be a lot of weird stuff going on. The only other part of this is that as a hotel community, because this took a significant number of rooms out of our competitive set, most of my constituents in the hotel industry here are very pleased with this opportunity. It not only reduced competition against their property, it may give them a place to house some of their employees as well. I also think this is really important to put our money where our mouth is. We talk about affordable housing. We've done so much research into it. There are so many more people than us that are trying to handle this as well. If we can start to make a dent in this now, today, we will succeed and rise to the level that we should be able to aspire to. If we fail to take this opportunity now and we continue to have delays or other smaller issues that might prevent it from happening, it will affect us. I have lost 3 hotel developers that have come to the area that have wanted to put hotels in here. 2 of them had money that would have been phenomenal for this area. Primarily housing was the big issue for them. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I really want to underscore that. The housing is the issue. We have demand. We have the best demand generator around here, Mesa Verde National Park, and all the other secondary and tertiary organizations that exist for that. But if you can't put your people close enough to where they work, they will not participate in the community. Thank you again for your time and your patience.
Thank you. Anybody else for or against? We'll close the public hearing. Comments, commissioners?
I'd just like to point out that this was approved already by Board of Adjustment and Appeals, and I feel like the need for affordable housing outweighs the need for parking spaces. And I also feel like it's a no-brainer. I mean, obviously, I own a business in town and nobody has parking. So I really don't understand why this is such a sticking point, because there are multiple buildings around the city that go from lot line to lot. I mean, there's so many exceptions out there that I think the need for housing outweighs all of these other issues.
Anyone else? Guess I would entertain a motion as presented by our planning department.
I'm correcting my math errors on there as we speak. The deficit is 28 spaces. Thank you, Rachel.
I'll practice again. Oh, thank you. That's even better. I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the Cortez City Council approve the site development plan for Zuma Apartments on property located at 550 and 640 South Broadway in the Commercial Highway C Zone, as submitted by Zuma Apartments LLC through P&Z Resolutions Number 14, Series 2022, with the following conditions that are written here, and I don't have to read. Well.
Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Proceed to vote.
Levy?
Yes.
Scorts?
Yes.
Weiss,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes.
I do have one question. Is that an oil can of Foster's you have there? The big thing you had. Oh, okay.
Next item on the agenda is an application from Basin Co-op. Is that within the 1 mile? Is your mic on?
It is within the, so the proposal is for Basin Co-op basically to add, I believe, a warehouse. It's a large warehouse. There's no retail sales, just a storage for agricultural properties. It is within the 1 mile area of influence, therefore city review is required, although it has direct access to Highway 491, so our master street plan is not affected. If you have any comments, concerns, we can provide them to the county.
Does anyone have any comments they would like to have the county read, or? Okay, thank you. We don't take any action, I believe, correct? Since we have no
Not
comments?
unless you want to.
Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on. Any unfinished business? Next, other items of business. You saw the permits. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Your mic on.
I'll second that.
She's on her mind.
We'll take a vote.
Weiss,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Scorts,
Yes.
and Remy.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.
And as an off the record, just for, because I'm weird and think census data's fun, I did a little search on vehicle ownership per household in Cortez. So 3% of households have no vehicles owned. 38% only have